So what I've got here is just a tutorial on how to add some controls to an animated Flash banner. I'm just going to set up a button that will control this banner here. If I hit enter just to preview it, it's a banner where photos just fade from one to the other. And some of my students just asked if there was a way of adding a button where you could skip the wait between photos if you wanted to just jump on to see the next one. So I'm going to use Actionscript 3. So it's important if you created an animated banner like this that it is Actionscript 3. If you're not sure, you can go to File and choose Publish Settings, and when that opens eventually you can then go to the Flash tab and make sure that the Actionscript version is Actionscript 3.0. There it is there. So okay. So what I'm going to do first of all is just set up some labels, and now I'm just going to add a new layer here at the top and rename it labels, and I'm just going to insert a label where each new photo begins. So here I'm going to go to frame 56, which is where this second photo begins to fade in, and down in the properties inspector I'm just going to call that one pic 2 because it's the second picture. Now I'm not putting a frame label back here in frame 1 simply because there's no fade transition. I'll put that in later on, you'll see how that'll work in a moment. So if I insert into the keyframe there where the third picture begins, and I'll insert my frame label, I'll repeat that for the fourth photo, so pick 4, and then moving along you can see where this final one starts to fade out and the original photo begins to fade in. So that's where I'm going to insert my first pic label, which is pic 1. Alright, now my next step, I'm just going to add a new layer for my button that's going to control this whole thing and name it button. And I'm just going to go to frame 1, which is where it's going to go, and go to insert and new symbol. I'm just going to call it BTN next, button next. Make sure it's a button type. Click OK. And you can play around with these states if you want, but essentially all I'm going to do is, I might make this a black button, just draw a rectangle there for the up state. If I insert a keyframe for the over state, I can just change the colour maybe so that it goes like a bluey colour. So now when I roll over my button it'll just change from black to blue. And I'll just put a bit of text over the top as well. Just word next. It's always nice to explain what the button does. And just change the font colour there to white. Now that's all extra stuff, you don't need to stress too much about that. You can do that in your own time. I'll just also add some frames there to the down and hit states. Just the hit state is basically the area on the screen that activates the button. Anyway, you can see I'm inside the button timeline right now. I'm just going to click on scene 1 here to return to the main stage, the main timeline. And over on my library, button next has appeared. I'm just going to click and drag it from my library onto my stage, and notice it is now appeared in frame 1 on the button layer. So if I test that movie now, that button will work. What I need to do now is have some actions on it. Now in Actionscript 3.0 you need to have your actions all on a layer rather than attached to the actual button itself. So I've added a new layer, renamed it Actions, and I'm going to click on that first frame, right click and choose Actions, and this will open my Actions panel. Now what I'm going to do is first of all set up a variable here by doing var, and I'm going to call it frame and set it to 1. Now I'll explain what this does in a moment, but we'll come back to that. So the next thing I need to do is I need to import the Flash events. So it's flash.events and then it's mouse event because I need all my mouse events, and mouse and event have both got capital E's there. Now that brings in all the events into Flash that we need. Now I need to create a listener, an event listener for this button. So in other words, Flash is listening out to see if anything's been done to it. Now before I do that, I'm just going to minimize my actions panel, and if I click on my button I'll come down to the properties and I need to give this an instance name. So I'm just going to call it next. Now that means this particular button has its own name. I'll just go back to my actions frame 1, open my actions panel, and now what I'll do is I will type in next, which is the name of that button I just created, dot add event listener, and notice each word has a capital, and in brackets I need to put the type of event it's going to be, and it's a mouse event, dot, in this case we want click, in all uppercase. Now if that happens we want to run a function, and I'm going to call that function btn click, short for button click. You notice it has lowercase btn and then a capital C. Now what I next need to do is define the function, so I go function btn click, that matches, and then in brackets what's going to launch it. In this case it's an event, mouse event, and the output will be nothing, so it's void. And there's a colon there. You notice a colon in the void and between event and mouse event. Now that's a curly bracket, and I'll just enter a couple of times to clear a line and close the curly brackets. Now everything inside these curly brackets is going to be what happens when the button is clicked. So I want it to go to and play, and then in brackets I need to send it to a particular frame. So this is the pick frame, so I'll go pick space, and then I'm closing the speech marks that go around the word pick. Now I want it then to add on a little bit of text to that pick thing, and that's going to be the name of the frame label, and if you remember they were labelled pick 1, 2, 3 and 4. So in this case I need that variable name, and I'm just going to add 1 to the existing variable, so it will go straight to pick 2, and close the first go to and play bracket, semicolon to end that command. But because I want, each time I want to click the button I want to increment up and go to the following frame, I'm now going to just go frame plus plus and then semicolon to close the command, and that automatically increments the frame variable up by 1. I do need to check though, because if frame reaches 4 I don't want it to go to frame or pick 5, because there is no pick 5. So I'm just going to set a little if statement that says if the frame equals 4. Now I need 2 equal signs because it's a condition. Then, and in curly brackets we put what happens. I'll just set the frame variable back to 0, and then I close the curly brackets, and notice that each command line ends in a semicolon. So what I'll do now is I'll just save that, so Control S. If I go Control Enter it will test my movie. Now fingers crossed. Now you can see here it's going through the time. If I click on next it automatically skips to the next photo, next clicks to the next, skips the next photo, and it seems to be working fine, and there it goes to the next one, and because Flash automatically cycles it goes back to frame 1 and begins again. So there you have it.